We start with the Blues. Board level turmoil. Craig Matheson stood down today after a spat on the weekend. Caro, what can you tell us, and where does this take the Carlton story as things begin to implode a little?
Well, clearly the board has not been united. Craig Matheson has been talking for some time negatively about the coach. He's been upset with some of the decisions by the president. He's also made comments about the CEO, Brian Cook, now, and the head of football, Brad Lloyd. The comments made in the Herald Sun 2 weeks ago by his uncle, the backroom power broker, the pokies man, Bruce Matheson, were pretty eerily similar, according to some on the board, to what Craig Matheson has been saying. Since the Bruce Matheson comments, Craig Matheson has not spoken with the CEO, Brian Cook, and other senior figures around the club, including Brad Lloyd, and I think Luke Sayers has wanted him to go pretty much since then. His position became untenable, I reckon, 2 weeks ago, and completely untenable when he lost it. He became pretty emotional in the rooms on Friday night during the Sydney game, after the Sydney game. Speaking
of directors, Greg Williams too is the other one that's been the subject of a bit of discussion around the place today.
Well, we just haven't really seen him, have we? I mean, he was front and centre when he took on the job, and he was a football director in the really old-fashioned sense of the word. Carlton seconded him, probably on a small wage, I'm not sure, but maybe not a small wage. Let's have a look at what Greg Williams said when he came to Carlton.
My main job is that, obviously with the board, is to put the right people in the right positions and let them do their job. But I'm going to be around more, throwing things around. You know, if I think we can do a bit better in one area, I'll be making sure I'm telling them. But I'm really confident with the people here already and the new ones that we're going to bring in. I'm really confident the football department's going to be in good hands.
This is last year when he was all smiles after the Swans win, and fair enough too, but the suggestion, Caro, is that given he's a paid employee of the club, are we seeing him enough? Or what? I don't really understand his role, to be fair.
Well, I think Brian Cook came in and was pretty horrified by the amount of committees that were already within the footy club. I'm not sure about what his role is either. I think that old-fashioned footy director role is just that, old-fashioned. And I don't think Greg Williams, though, is the biggest problem in the Carlton Footy Club. I don't think there's unity in the football department, and I don't think there's unity among the team.
We'll talk about the football department in a moment. Can we talk about the board? There's a Legends event, ironically, tonight, and we'll hear from a potential president in a moment in Mike Fitzpatrick. But the Luke Sayers situation, can you explain that to us?
Well, Luke Sayers has been under the radar and I think should have come out more strongly against Bruce Matheson's comments 2 weeks ago. But he's also got another issue from his time at PWC. Well, look at this. I mean, I think the 9 partners who haven't been named today have been stood down as a result of these pretty horrifying tax allegations to do with the government. And whether Luke Sayers is... I haven't asked him directly. The suggestions from his defenders are that they don't directly involve him at his time running PWC. Others say he is very much implicated in it, and I think it does make his role more difficult. His time is up. His last term is at the end of next year. He can stay on for one more year after that if he so chooses. But I think, you know, this scandal is making it difficult for him. I'm not suggesting he is in any way involved, but clearly he was there for a lot of this timeline.
Yeah, ill-timed for him, albeit before his time by the sounds of it. Mike Fitzpatrick was a name floated on the weekend as a potential replacement for Luke. The cameras were there tonight and Tony Jones was among them, who asked him if he would put his hand up to go back and be a white knight at Carlton.
I don't really have a burning desire at the moment, no.
How do you feel? Mike, it's sort of an open-ended sort of an answer, that one, isn't it? So you're not categorically ruling it out.
And I'm not ruling it in.
And there it was. So Luke Sayers arriving tonight. The timing is everything. Anyone who was at Carlton tonight, and they were all in a pretty uncomfortable
including Craig Matheson.
Did you find that strange, Caro, that he was there?
I find it pretty strange. And I can tell you, look, he's not a popular person at Carlton at the moment. He's not popular.
Who, Mike?
No. Craig Matheson. Mark LaJudice, the previous president, was there. There's so many people potting Carlton from the cheap seats at the moment, but the last thing they need is people doing it internally, which is happening.
Let's talk about on-field for a moment and the leaders. So Patrick Cripps, and you got some insight into the weekend just gone, Caro, but there's some shots of Patrick returning with his partner, presumably on the weekend, a day later. Now, he was injured, to be fair to him, but the suggestion is that he didn't stay with the team on the weekend, Kane, and Caro might shed a bit of light on that in a moment.
Yeah, I don't personally have an issue with that, Carol. I think footy clubs do this all the time. If there's a Friday night game and the players have the following day off, some players would choose to stay in that location and have a bit of a holiday. So I didn't have an issue with it, did you?
Oh, well, I may as well. So, first of all, Patrick Cripps, when they had a short break after the West Coast game, was given leave to have an extra day at home. He's obviously a Perth boy. I don't think many eyebrows were raised over that, but internally a couple of people did. And then before the Sydney game, I think Sam Doherty and Patrick Cripps didn't stay at the team hotel. They stayed at a boutique hotel in Paddington. I'm just making the comment. Is that unusual, Matthew? It just seems when times like this, when you need to galvanise, just seemed a bit odd to me they weren't all together.
I've got
after
no
the game.
issue at all. I think it's what happens when you lose, things like that pop up. Like I was at the AFL this morning doing a show and Toby Green was there. So he obviously hasn't flown home to Sydney after they've beaten Geelong over the weekend. So I think we look far more into things when teams are losing. I'd be surprised if you don't stay in the same hotel as other players. So that can cause an issue if, for example, you fly to go and play a game and two senior blokes go, I'm going off to a boutique hotel to stay. If that's what happened. Yep. That's not what you do, in my opinion. You stay together at all the same hotel. You build that connection. The last thing you want is go, what about those two blokes? They're in this hotel and we're in that hotel. I don't agree with that, but I've got no issue with...
So should the club have...
Well, they did. They stayed in a different hotel. I mean, I'm not making any judgment. Maybe they've got a deal at that hotel. Maybe it's got something to do... It's a commercial thing. I don't know. I just assumed all players, particularly club leaders, like Cripps and Doherty, would stay with the rest of the team.
I would think so.
What the issue for him, though, is on field. And clubs are coming after him, and they're coming after him hard, and he's not having the impact that he had last year. 20 goals he kicked last year, just the one this year. And this was Heaney on him after we've seen Dawson, we've seen Dunkley, we've seen Steele go after him, and now it's Heaney, which was a genius move from John Longmire to do this. And what Cripps does, he takes his opponent to the ball. So not only is he negated, his opponent that he's playing on is starting to have big numbers and big impact. Even Cripps gets it there, Lordo, but Heaney is all over him. So stop Cripps, stop Carlton.
Explain, though, what has changed, in your opinion, from last year for a player like Patrick Cripps?
Well, you've just got to be on the move at stoppage. I think he stands stationary at stoppage too often, which makes him just easy to hug up. And last year we saw him through the move with power through the stoppage and bursting away and delivering inside 50. A lot of his possessions were in the forward half of the ground. Now they're in tight, and he's clearly not having the same impact.
And pre-Voss, there was a famous footy review where everyone was under the pump there for a period of time. The changes weren't significant. Michael Voss came in as a senior coach, and there were some other tweaking of the assistants.
Well, intriguingly, the CEO, Kane Liddell, who didn't want Ross Lyon, he ended up going as well. But this is a supporting cast. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that Michael Voss supporters told Carlton that he would be a very good man manager, he was a great choice of coach, that he would need help in the tactic strategy area, Kane.
Yep.
And there are some pretty impressive footy names there. Obviously Luke Power, very impressive name. Aaron Hamill, Ash Hansen, one of the high-rated, young assistant coaches. But there's no real senior brain power. And the other person who is probably relatively... Well, certainly he was reviewed and relatively inexperienced as a footy boss is Brad Lloyd. Now, Brad Lloyd is come under the pump in recent weeks. This is a young coaching group. They've re-signed the head high performance boss. They re-signed him for another 2 or 3 years at the end of last year, obviously on a reduced wage, Andrew Russell. But now people are saying, is Brad Lloyd decisive enough? Is he strong enough? And do they need to bring in potentially as well a senior assistant coach for Michael Voss to help him? Now, I don't know why in this review, and Brad Lloyd was one of them reviewed, and we heard that he might be under the pump, but he ended up keeping his job. I can't understand why more senior personnel were not put around Michael Voss, given what Carlton were advised at the time.
Well, there's two things that can happen when you're under pressure, and that is you keep the coach and you change the assistant coaches around him, as we saw with Damien Hardwick at the end of 2016, or the coach goes. Now, I don't see...
And Simon Goodwin as well. That happened with Simon Goodwin. I have no doubt there will be a big manpower change at the end of the year, but I just don't see how you can move on Michael Voss. Even if the year continues to peter out, they can't sack another coach.
I think that with Brian Cook coming to the club, the last thing he's going to do is be moving on Michael Voss or moving on too many. I think that's he wants stability, and he feels like that's what the Carlton of old would have done.
Lots of talk about the list. Pitney was signed for 4 years. They would say that there was tension in that. They had to protect it. De Koning may or may not be there. So
That's true. Everyone was coming for Pitney, even more than De Koning.
I want to jump ahead to Harry McKay. So Harry's deal, right? This is the elephant in the room a little bit. This 7-year, $7 million deal is yet to start. So the pressure year now, before this year kicks in, what sort of pressure is he under with his kicking being off, with his game being not at its best, and yet to walk into this long-term deal?
It's a bizarre one, and we've done Carlton's list management decisions a number of times on this program, but that's extraordinary that they have committed to that, and that was the commentary around the time that he signed it, not just in hindsight. But what can you do with it, Hutchie? I mean, you could look to ring North Melbourne and see whether they'd be prepared to give him their pick, and you pay some of the wage. We saw how drastic...
It's not at that point, surely.
Well,
and the currency on a trade is not there anyway because of the money now. Like, they've taken any potential trade currency out.
So there's no point. There's no point talking about it. All you can do, Lordo, and you had some great advice for him in the Sunday Footy Show yesterday, is get to work and fix his issues as best you can. Otherwise, it's going to be a long 7 years.
Yeah, the hard part that I saw on Friday night was it's filtered to his marking. So one aspect of his game that even in round 2, he marked everything v Geelong up the field. He helped save the game late with big marks, and I could have shown 7 or 8 where he dropped marks off the back of his kicking. So his kicking issues have now gone to his marking problems, Hutch.
So you think he's thinking about the fear of kicking next?
The fear of kicking next, which is taken away from his marking.
Wow.
So that's how low it's
And
gone.
how do you work your way to this? Like, Brisbane put Joe down here in the ruck. You used that as an example on the weekend.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a circuit breaker. I don't think it's in the twos. It's not going back there, but it is to potentially start in another role.